Are you a car thief?" "Oh, no!" Hilliard exclaimed, shaking his head vehemently. "It was a crazy impulse. Look, times were tough for me. I was just out of the service. I did not have a job. No future. I was depressed about Sputnik. The DeSoto represented everything I ever wanted. Everything I could not have." The room fell silent for a moment. Hilliard's confession was not born of malice, but of a strange, misdirected longing for beauty and stability in a world that felt entirely uncertain. "Exactly when did you steal this car?" Barney asked, his tone shifting from authoritative to genuinely curious. "October 6th, 1957, Hilliard confessed, his voice dropping to a whisper. Barney blinked. "That is almost 25 years ago. But that car looks as good today as it did the day that I stole it." Hilliard defended proudly, his eyes shining with tears of devotion. "Yes, it is true," Wojciech confirmed, a hint of admiration in his voice. "He let me drive it down here. It is beautiful." "Well, remember to put that in your report," Barney noted with a dry smile. "Thank you," Wojciech said. "Do you want to check with the district attorney's office about the statute of limitations? He only hit you 10 minutes ago." Barney pointed out gently. "Park it right there." Chapter 2. The Pride of the Sanitation Police. The telephone on the central desk rang, slicing through the quiet murmurs of the squad room. Sergeant Harris picked it up with a practiced grace. "12th Precinct, Sergeant Harris," he answered. He listened for a moment, his expression shifting from mild irritation to professional alertness. "That is funny. How was this passed? We got a police officer in trouble in Washington Square. Maybe." Some shots fired. The atmosphere in the room transformed instantly. The casual banter dissolved, replaced by the sharp, focused energy of men whose calling was to protect and serve. "Okay, that is everybody," Barney ordered, his voice ringing out with command. "Break out some weapons. Put him in a cage." He gestured toward Hilliard. "Yes, in a cage," Hilliard muttered, standing up and shuffling toward the holding cell. "I just sat down. In a cage." "Harris," Barney called out, moving toward the coat rack. "I just finished my filing," Harris noted, though he was already reaching for his sidearm. "Fine. All right. Got him. Let us go." As the detectives rushed out the door, Barney paused, his eyes sweeping the room to ensure everything was secure. "I do not want anybody getting hurt. Whose car are they taking?" "Mine." Wojciech called back from the hallway. The squad room grew quiet once more, leaving only Barney, Hilliard in the cell, and the distant, muffled sounds of the city streets below. Moments later, the heavy doors swung open again, and the detectives returned, their faces bearing expressions of utter bewilderment rather than the grim relief of a resolved shootout. Wojciech and Harris walked in, flanking a man wearing a uniform that resembled a police officer's, yet carried an entirely different insignia. He looked offensive, angry, and fiercely proud. "Sir, you are crawling," Harris muttered to the man, dusting off his own suit jacket. "I am afraid we are a little short-handed now." Barney stepped forward, his eyes narrowing at the stranger. "What is the case, sir?" Before anyone could explain, the telephone rang again. Barney answered it. "Captain Miller, a construction site over on Amsterdam? Some kids climbing all over the equipment? You have to chase them off." "That is it?" "Afraid so." "Oh, would you not send a squad car for that?" "I was going to." "Of course. Well, perhaps we can take on the little heathens together. Sir, goodbye." He hung up the phone and looked around the room. "I need someone to take a call on Amsterdam Avenue. Officer Carl Levitt, a man whose ambition was always slightly taller than his physical stature, stepped forward eagerly. "I am available. Look, if you give me a minute. Maybe I can find out if there is a squad car in the neighborhood. Sir, I will take it." "Thank you, Levitt," Barney said. He turned his attention back to the bizarre procession standing in the middle of his squad room. "Now, what on earth is going on here?" Wojciech sighed, pointing to the man in the strange uniform. "You tell me." "Barney, This is our police officer in trouble. What? Barney asked, thoroughly confused. These two men answer to you? The man puffed out his chest. Yes, I am Officer Ross Sladek, Sanitation Police. Barney stared. Sanitation Police? I think your boys here made a little mistake, Sladek said, crossing his arms defiantly. No, we did not, Wojciech retorted. What happened? Barney asked, pinching the bridge of his nose to ward off an impending headache. Well, Wojciech explained, pacing the floor, when we got to the park. Officer Sladek here was prodding a Mr. Anthony Peglia with his nightstick, forcing him to crawl around on the ground and pick up assorted cigarette butts and candy wrappers. Sladek spoke up, his voice ringing with absolute moral certainty. That slob threw a candy bar wrapper down on the grass, and I made him get down there with it. You just asked him to pick it up? Barney inquired, trying to find the logic. I tried that, Sladek insisted, his face flushing with remembered frustration. I tried. I identified myself as a sanitation officer. And he laughed at me and just kept walking. That is when I told him to freeze. And I fired 2 warning shots into the air. The squad room fell into a stunned silence. Warning shots, Barney repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Well, you do not make a mess on my beat and just walk away, Sladek defended, entirely missing the gravity of his actions. Anyway, Wojciech continued, shaking his head. Mr. Peglia signed a complaint right on the spot, and then mentioned something about moving to Maine. Good riddance to bad rubbish, Sladek muttered under his breath. Barney stepped very close to the sanitation police officer, his authority rolling off him in waves. Officer Sladek, are you aware that you have opened yourself to charges of harassment, coercion, and probably reckless endangerment? Sladek held his ground, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. Look, you have your laws to enforce, and I have mine. I mean, we all want clean sidewalks, right? Unclogged drains, trash packed neatly in cans, metal cans with lids on tight, so that the sewer rats are not swarming all over the city, living off our filth. Barney shook his head slowly. That is hardly a reason to shoot at somebody for littering. Have you not been listening? Dietrich, get a statement. Detective Arthur Dietrich, a man whose encyclopedic knowledge was matched only by his dry, deadpan delivery, nodded and guided Sladek toward a desk. What? Sladek panicked, looking between the detectives. You are not going to book me, are you? Yes, Barney stated firmly. We are all police officers. Sladek pleaded, a desperate camaraderie in his voice. We do not do stuff like that to each other. Oh, yes, we do. Barney corrected him softly but sternly. Sit down. Sladek collapsed into the chair, the bravado finally draining from him. You know, I spent 7 stinking years hanging off the back of that truck, he whispered, staring vacantly at the worn wooden floor. 7 years getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, in the rain, in the snow, picking up other people's garbage, people who treated me like dirt. The room softened slightly. Beneath the absurd danger of his actions was a man who only wanted a shred of dignity. Who cares? Sladek continued, his voice cracking. I would go to all the parties. You know, I would listen to all the snide remarks. Like, what school did you go to? Or, look, it is the man from the garbage company. What has 4 wheels and flies? A garbage truck. He looked up, tears brimming in his eyes. But I never let it bother me, because I knew if I just did my job, just kept the streets and my nose clean, that one day I would be promoted to this. He tugged at the lapel of his uniform. Then we would see who was laughing. Harris, who had been listening from his desk, felt a surprising pang of empathy. The desire for respect, the pain of feeling diminished, these were universal human experiences, regardless of whether one wielded a pen or drove a sanitation truck. I am going to sit down now, Sladek mumbled, completely defeated. Wojciech walked over to Barney's desk. Anything shaking? Yes, Barney replied, looking over a sheet of paper. I checked Hilliard for previous arrests, and he is entirely clean. Then I checked out the car. I dug up a stolen vehicle